Hello and welcome to this discussion on your IP, your future with Creative First. Our guest today is cinematographer and director of photography, Dhawalika Singh. She has worked on feature films such as Kutch Express, the thriller Dear Father, and shows such as Prisoner of War, Band Yudh Ke, directed by Nikhil Advani, and the official Indian adaptation of The Office for BBC India and Applause Social Media. She holds degrees in English literature from Delhi University and filmmaking from AJ Kidwai Mass Communication Research Center, Jamia Millia Islamia, New Delhi. Dhawalika, welcome to this discussion.
Thank you so much.
What motivated you to be a cinematographer?
So the motivation struck me personally much later in life. I was 22 and I'd finished graduation. I'd finished my degree in literature and I was placed in a hedge fund in Hyderabad from college. And doing that job for a year made me realize that I can't be stuck to a desk and screen all my life. And that's when I was earning enough money. I bought my first camera and I started doing some stills work. I was watching a lot of documentaries at that time, reading a lot about documentary filmmaking, and that's how I applied to AJK MCRC, which specializes in documentary filmmaking. And yeah, that's how it started. And once I was there, the fiction bug bit me, and the idea of lighting and creating spaces and not just documenting spaces was something I discovered once I went to AJK MCRC. And yeah, it was addictive. There's adrenaline to it, which I couldn't escape. Yeah, that's how I got into cinematography.
For our young audiences, do you think a degree, a proper filmmaking degree really helps? Because a lot of people just start their careers in films and they move on to cinematography from photography. What really gives you an edge when you study it?
Honestly, I don't think it necessarily gives you an edge. I know it might not be a very popular opinion, but I think that eventually, whether you've studied or not studied, there is a certain period of time, 5-6 years of time, that you have to spend learning on the job. Maybe when you don't do the course, the 2 years that you spend studying at the course is the extra time you'll be spending on set learning the skills. Where I think it gives you an edge, according to me, more than the technical aspect of cinematography, which you learn on the job, is the wholesome idea of filmmaking, the idea of the study of the history of filmmaking, how different genres of filmmaking emerged, or different styles of editing emerged, or different styles of lighting emerged. That constructed awareness about the history of film, I think, is what gives you an edge, because then you don't just look at your job as a director of photography as just a technical job. You look at yourself as an artist contributing to the creation of a narrative. And I think that's the edge of studying in a constructed manner.
Could you give us an example of how cinematography can play a role in storytelling or furthering the narrative, as you just mentioned?
For instance, okay, if you understand editing, then if there's a scene which is written between 3 characters in one space and 3 characters in another space, you can bring the idea that these can be intercut and how you can flow from one space to another. But that can come only if you understand editing a little bit. If you don't understand editing and how time is constructed and can be molded in a film, then you can't suggest that as a DP to your director. Obviously, it's a hugely collaborative process. Like, one thing I've understood in the last 10 years is that alone you can't create a film. I think filmmaking is one of those art forms which requires collaboration. It's not like painting, it's not like sculpture, it's not like writing. It's the only way a good film is made when all the people involved collaborate. So that understanding beyond just cinematography that you bring to the table when pre-production is going on, when planning is going on, is something where you contribute as an artist to the film. For instance, there might be scenes that the writer has imagined, which has happened to me quite a lot of times actually. Writers imagined at night, but you understand that the emotion that is being created or is being said in this particular scene can be reflected much better if it's a daylight scene. If you have access to more light or you have access to more shadows. So those are the kind of things that you can bring to the table.
What are the skills required to take up cinematography as a profession? Like, for example, in sound design, if you've already done your engineering or you've done some kind of technical course, you'll find it far more easier. And then you just have to apply your creative mind because you probably understand, the devices, etc., that you're using.
So I was a science student till class 12. And I think that when I finally went to Jamia to study cameras, it did help understanding the physics of how an image is formed. And I could see that it gave me an edge over probably some of my classmates who hadn't studied science. But at the same time, they did end up finishing their course and they did end up learning cinematography. But yes, in the initial stages, when you're trying to understand the technique of how an image is actually formed on the sensor, it does help a little bit knowing some science.
What are your future plans? Are you thinking of dabbling into other areas of filmmaking?
So, like I said, I got into filmmaking with the idea of being a documentary filmmaker. That's been set aside for the last few years. I'm hoping that somewhere down the line, I can make some documentaries, direct them, create them. But as we all know, that nonfiction is a much tougher space in our country, and finding budgets for it, like you can, unless you have your own money to invest, it's a very hard space because there are very few people willing to invest in nonfiction. It's changing a little bit now with OTTs, but I still think the kind of narratives that are being accepted, or the way channels want to see or want to make documentaries entertaining, or there's a push to even commercialize documentary filmmaking. And when you see documentary filmmakers from across the world, there's this lovely documentary filmmaker that I assisted and for a long time called Nisha Pahuja. She made this film called The World Before Her, and she's made a new film now, which should be in India hopefully soon. She spent 8-9 years shooting her films, and then editing them for 3-4 years. That's the kind of effort it takes, I feel, to build a genuine character-based documentary. For instance, Wild Wild Country, why does it do so well? Because they spent years on research, but I don't think we still have accepted that about nonfiction in our country, that it takes a lot more time than fiction to create a good nonfiction narrative.
So, I'm sure a lot of documentaries get funded quite easily in the rest of the world, right? In the West, for example. What really makes them take that, risk, or, how come they're willing to wait? Because all the reasons that you mentioned are logical, because it does take time to build that, narrative. So, how does it work then? What needs to happen here? Because you yourself said that you wanted to work on nonfiction, and if given a chance, you'll do that. What should change?
From what I've understood, first of all, there's a lot of support from the broadcasting systems, the government broadcasting systems, to create documentaries. There's avenues to showcase them. There's festivals dedicated just to documentary films, which gives a platform, right? Which gives a platform for these films, and which makes sense then investing money in it. And then they also, I think, have a lot of trust and funds investing in documentaries. I think we don't have that system set up in our country yet, where individual trust or non-profit trust invest in making films, especially non-fiction films. So people are reliant on commercial entities or profit-making entities. And as we all know, like, a profit-making entity will always come with their own agenda when they're funding you, right? They won't give you a free rein to say what you want to say, which is one of the most important aspects of making a documentary. So I think it's a convoluted system, which I think hopefully with time will evolve into something which is more democratic.
I'm going to definitely ask, if you're interviewing any filmmakers or production houses, I'm definitely going to ask them about their views on how to fund documentaries, because you made some really valid points there. Many Indian productions hire international technical crew, for cinematography or sound design or post-production. What is your view on the same?
To each their own. If they think that's white skin print,
Do you
better
feel somewhere it's
skills.
good because there's a lot of, technical exchange, knowledge exchange?
Absolutely. And it's great that that's happening. I just hope that I don't know much about it. I don't try and delve into it, but I just hope that people are coming with the right paperwork, because I know that we as technicians can't go and work somewhere else without the right paperwork. But because we are in an organized industry, I don't know. I mean, eventually, I think, yes, if some director thinks that they're going to get a better result out of collaborating, like I was talking to, I won't take names, but I was talking to a very senior filmmaker recently. I was on set, and his view was that because he's so senior, most people, young people who come to work with him, are slightly intimidated by him. So he finds it easier to work with someone from another country because they don't come with the baggage of who he is over the years, right? And it makes complete sense to me, because as a director, it's important for them also to have someone challenge them on set, right? But I understand when you have that much history of being a successful filmmaker, probably young filmmakers don't challenge you the same way as someone who doesn't know who you are, So it makes sense. I mean, more the merrier, I guess.
Dhawalika, cinematography is such a highly skilled, I would say profession. And you mentioned that, you find the industry somewhere can be more organized. Could you highlight a few things? I think y'all are also represented by the cinematographers combined, right?
There's something called ISC, which is membership based, which I'm not a member of yet. But we do have something called IWCC, which is Indian Women Cinematographers Collective, which was started by these lovely, very inspiring women, Priya Seth, Deepti, Fauzia, Savita. They're senior filmmakers who've been in this profession when there was no women to be found on set, and they ended up setting this up. And now we're a strong community of 120, 130. I'm not even sure how many people.
Fantastic. So, the women are getting things done, and, women are more organized.
Yes. My last shoot, we made, we were 5 female operators working together on a set. And I mean, I think these things, the changes are important, but by unorganized, I mean that at the end of the day, this is IWCC is not a union, it's a collective, right? VICCI exists as a union, but I don't know how efficient they are. For instance, the number of hours we put in, or at what point do people start getting paid overtime? It's always ambiguous. It's always ambiguous, and it's always up to the production. There's no rules about it. There's no set of rules that are followed. There are written rules, but they're not followed and implemented. And and in many other ways, like when it comes to safety measures on sets and stuff like that, we're not a very organized industry, but that's how it's worked for so many years.
Yes, possibly. Yeah, that's something that the organization you represent can also work towards. I'm sure it's a long, it's really going to take a long time, but I think, it's great that as a woman, you're talking about it.
But it's going to change, I think, slowly as more studios come into the picture. I think that's slowly changing because safety measures are being implemented a lot better. COVID helped with that, actually, because everyone suddenly was, so once there were COVID measures, there were also health measures, there was also safety measures that were brought onto sets.
So what has your experience been, as a woman cinematographer in our industry?
I've had a very pleasant experience, honestly. Like obviously 1 or 2 things here and there, but fortunately I've met the nicest of people who've never made me feel that I can't do this because I'm a woman. Even my immediate bosses, I've worked with someone called Hemant Chaturvedi. You'll know him. He's a very esteemed cinematographer, and Shamik Mukherjee. And both these men never made me feel that I was given the toughest shots and the toughest places to be at, because I mean, I was very blessed. I know people have had bad experiences, but I was very blessed to not have too many bad experiences. So either from my directors or DPs or the rest of the crew, like never made to feel that I could not do this because I'm a woman.
What is the message that you would like to give young professionals, especially women wanting to pursue a career in cinematography?
It's a lot of hard work. It's not easy. It's a lot of patience. especially because most of us are working freelance. There's huge, huge periods of non-employment where you have to keep your calm and believe that work's gonna come. And one thing which I was passed on by Hemant when I was working with him, and which has really helped me, create hobbies, create things that bring you satisfaction and joy outside of the profession. Because if you're solely dependent on this profession, which can be very arbit at times and very and not very consistent when it comes to workflow, it can lead to a lot of sadness and disappointment. So know that this is not the only source of happiness. This is your major source of happiness, but there's other ways to be happy as well.
But I think what's really great about also what you just said is that, it's a profession where you can also take up a second profession. Not many professions let you do that.
Yeah. You can do things on the side. Definitely. You can write alongside. You can, I try and do more still work alongside, keep that alive and not just be dependent on, commercial cinematography for my work satisfaction. So you can choose what you want to do, but just don't make this your only creative outlet is one advice I would like to give.
Dhawalika, thank you so much for this discussion this morning, especially for your time. I'm sure a lot of people will be inspired listening to you, and kudos to the great work you've done so far.
Thank you so much, Rohita. Lovely speaking with you. All the best to Creative First for putting this out, and hopefully young people can listen and make balanced choices.
Thank you so much. Bye.